Hey, how you guys doing? It's producer from Brothers Comics. Welcome to the Marvel Hacks. Law, we are going into the Wayback Machine, all the way back to 1997. We'll get to it in a second. On the line is Brother Beaver. Say what's happening, man.
What up, Marvel Hacks?
I know it's been forever since we've done a comic episode, and there's really been a reason for that, for the most part, that modern comics aren't great. Much like modern wrestling, those two things, there's an appearance of what we liked when we were younger, but it's only really an appearance. And so as we were reading some of the more recent Marvel books, it just became kind of like a like more of a chore than something that we enjoyed. And so we've always done a little bit better going back to the books from when we were younger. So we're going to go all the way back to 1997 in anticipation of the Disney Plus relaunch of X-Men the animated series called X-Men 97 to see what was going on in those books in the X-Men in the year of 1997. So we're going to look at the Uncanny book and the new X-Men book that launched in 1992. The issues as we go through will be starting at Uncanny 340 and then X-Men 60. And we will go through there. We'll slide off into some different topics here and there. I'm not 100% sure. Is there a crossover event somewhere in these books? Did you get a chance to look that up?
Oh, I don't know what it is, but this is definitely crossover era. I mean,
Mm.
this was almost to the point where it was just pure filler. It was
Mm.
all house shows, and then pay-per-view was the crossover.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is definitely the era where like you were lucky if you could have the same creative team 2 books in a row, if
Boy.
there was a story that actually finished, because it was all just setting up the next big crossover and the multi-cover variant
Oh
nonsense. So
yeah, there. And they're the Phalanx are here, but I don't think is this Phalanx Covenant era? I thought that was earlier. Or did the
Mm,
Phalanx make a reappearance?
no, I mean, I don't know. Well, so the Phalanx were in the first run of the cartoon, like season 4. So
Mm.
they were probably, let's see, and then when did Booberry come out? And Cool Ranch Doritos.
Yeah,
No, they did a Phalanx Covenant story within the first run, which is called X-Men 97 because it ran for 5 years and started in 92. So they're picking
mm,
it up. So it would have been like 93, 94 probably. And then
okay.
they stuck it in there. So yeah. And
Oh,
plus the whole like them was that that stems from Warlock and New Mutant stories from even farther back. So yeah,
okay.
that was old. Now I can't remember how they come back. I'm sure they get recycled at some point, but yeah, the original Phalanx Covenant I think would have been out by now.
So, yeah, so we're gonna look at the creative teams for both of these books. X-Men book is in a interim phase, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The Uncanny book has a very steady, at least artist and writer team. But like I said, we'll jump into it all together. But first, this is your series overview. Like I said, Uncanny starting in 340, and I have an error here. So it's 340 to 350 ish. And then X-Men's 60 to 70. This is post onslaught era. So we have that going for us, which is nice. This is in a post Age of Apocalypse era as well. So you have those two major events that kind of reset the X books in two different ways. But as you said before we started recording, these are some filler ass books, to be fair.
I mean, part of it is to just drop into it cold. Now, the funny thing too is this is like, you know, these are still wordy comic books. This is not
Yeah.
22 splash pages. This is Shoo, I had to have barbecue to get through this whole thing, So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
but we did definitely get airdropped into these stories.
yeah. And again, it's just 1997. And like you said, the X-Men, the cartoon that's picking up is just kind of picking up from there. We're gonna talk about that here in a second. But I was going back and going through the books and I was just going through the covers, like to see if that would do anything to like kind of sharpen my memory. And then I was like, man, when we get to 350, I remember that being a big deal with the Gambit reveal. Like I remember that being a big deal back in the day, but was also a fairly large letdown as well with some super retconning. But I don't know. Like it's just kind of like a weird era of X books. You're in this post Claremont, post Image launch era, and you kind of have these books trying to compete artistically against those Image books, but also
Mhm.
try to maintain the historical aspect of the Claremont era by telling these kind of ranging and long read stories to kind of keep that sort of continuity. What do you think?
Yeah, and I looked it up. We're a year past Age of Apocalypse, a year or more past Age of Apocalypse, and the
Mm,
next crossover is Operation Zero Tolerance. And so we're definitely in the humans are the bad guys, but
mm.
there's people propping up the humans. And so in that respect, this does definitely carry forward into the stories that are being told right now.
Yeah,
So
and especially there for the books for tonight. And we'll get into it. All right. So before we get there, where the hell are you in January of 1997, sir?
um I am
Have you made the move? Are you Texas bound
no,
at this
this
point?
is I'm finishing up grad school.
Okay.
Finishing up grad school. I think I'm living back in Dayton at this
Mm,
point, or
okay.
at least in the greater metropolitan Dayton area. So yeah, just still a nerd. Um, have a girlfriend at this point.
Oh, wow, yeah.
We're cohabitating, living in sin as
Nice.
they call it.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah, so no, but still waiting for the big journey out of state
Okay.
is coming up right around the time of Operation Zero Tolerance.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in Florida, my first run in Florida before the relaunch and the reboot.
And the first your first run in the territory.
Yeah, before the reboot for that loser leave town match. I'm in a relationship that's going to end poorly in about a year. And then 98's a terrible year for me personally and family wise. It was just a bad year. So this is the literal calm before the storm situation. But I'm still working in education, doing whatever I can to read comic books and go to the comic book store on Wednesday. That was pretty much it. I really wasn't doing too much on that first run in Florida because what is there to do? It's too hot to do hardly anything at that point. And so yeah, it's yeah. When we if and when we get to 98, yeah, that's gonna be a completely different story. But yeah, I'm still down there, but and not plotting my eventual try to get out of there to return to the motherland. See that in 1998. All right, here we go. That'll be the 1998 issue. All right, so X-Men 97 on Disney Plus coming soon. It's supposed to have been out sometime this year. It got pushed back. I don't think this is a writer's strike thing. I just think things got pushed back. Coming out in early 2024 at this point. What are your thoughts and expectations here? Hutch is not on here tonight, but he would tell you that that original X-Men the animated series sucked. I would want to
He
smack
would
him
be
upside
wrong.
the head. Yes, I want to smack him
He would
upside
be
the
wrong.
head because he's 100% wrong. But because speaking of the motherland, can you go home again? Like, what is the expectation and or who is the target audience for this show? Because most
Yeah.
people that would have seen it are definitely closer to AARP than like some young kids that would think about watching it.
So there's a lot there. Um so I would say the animation was always pretty bad. I mean, like the static animation, them just standing there and the character designs was fine, was great. But then whenever anybody had to walk,
Mm,
let alone fight, particularly Wolverine's fights were always pretty bad.
yeah.
It wasn't great. The voice acting was great. The the translation of the stories was usually pretty good, but they would always kind of do some weird stuff uh for not great reasons. And then after, season 3, after like Dark Phoenix, it kind of starts to fall apart because they had sort of worked through most of the classic stuff. And then they were doing some updated stories that were kind of a mix of what was in the books, but kind of some of the stuff had gone before, so it did kind of get weird. And then when they switched up the animation style later, it just that was kind of the beginning of the end. So my I think part of the reason it's been pushed off, I just think they finally figured it out. Like they just can't keep up the pace of putting stuff out, and people can't absorb it. So I kind of feel like they knew they couldn't get a movie into the release cycle just with everything that was already planned, and this would be something that I would spark interest because of the popularity of the show. And what I'm really wondering is if like this really becomes the launching point for the X-Men that we expect to see in the movies at some point, or if it's just a filler and it'll be disconnected. So that's kind of the thing I wonder. Now, the thing that made it good was they were showing reasonable depictions of classic storylines. Are there classic storylines in the interim for them to base this on, particularly if they're just dropping into the scenario that's set up, which is Magneto leads the X-Men and Professor X out of the story? That I don't know. So I don't know if they're going to just do original stories or try and adapt something before. I kind of would rather see them just like create a new continuity, but then I don't know. So target audience, I think they're obviously leaning heavily on the nostalgia, but at the same time, I think they're trying to set up just general fans of the MCU, and hopefully, this is a lead into the movie that we probably won't get to like 2027 at this point
Jesus.
with the roster they've got already lined up.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, we dip into our childhood a lot on this various shows, and we're full ass adults. Well, not full ass, but close to full ass adults when the original show comes out, and it met and went way above our expectations at the time. On the
Mm-hmm.
rewatch, it does have obviously its problems and concerns that can be alleviated with better animation, you would assume better storytelling, all of that with a bunch of Disney money behind it. But I, what stories are we gonna tell here? Are we going and we're using the same team? That is my understanding from the original cartoon. So you have
Well,
no
they've
update.
added a couple, so their
Who did they add?
Sunspot is going to be in it,
Okay.
and Morph is back in it, but more like kind of more like his. Actually, from what I saw, it was more like his Age of Apocalypse design.
Oh, okay.
But then I think everybody else is in it. Bishop with a legitimate hairstyle
Oh
instead
God.
of the Jerry Curl
Jerry
mullet.
Curl. Yeah, Lord.
Um, so yeah,
I mean, the bar was set fairly high with Wolverine and the X-Men, the cartoon on Nick, and that's a very good cartoon. Yes, it's Wolverine centric, but the animation is amazing.
yeah.
They tell fairly good stories and left us on the worst cliffhanger ever. And now this is the follow up, what, 14 years later, 15 years later. It just seems like the gap in between this, on top of the fact that there's a good portion of time there where the X-Men were making comic books, or they were comic books, but they had been replaced by, the Inhumans. That Marvel kind of ignored them a little bit, not a little
Mm.
bit, a lot of bit for a lot of years. So that gap in between, like, is that 20 to 30-year-old who would have been somewhere growing up in that time frame going to care enough about this to load up Disney Plus to watch this particular show? I'm very curious as to see what it is. If they put a bunch of money behind it and creative teams and they give us a X-Men version of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, bet I'll be sitting here watching it every Saturday morning too. But if it's just another Disney like kind of produced cartoon, I would probably have no interest in that.
Come on, you're gonna watch an X Men cartoon.
I will debate you on that, and I would tell you that I would not. If
I
if
mean, when
it's
we get to episode 6 and it's the customary Mojo episode, then yes, I
yeah,
will concede.
yes,
If they just like, oh, here's we got to have a Mojo story, and I don't know,
yeah,
but I don't know. We'll
yeah,
see. I'd
it's weird.
almost like it. I don't even know what to expect, honestly.
Honestly,
This
I have
this
no
might be where we
expectation.
just need to not think about it so
Yeah,
that when it comes out, we can enjoy it.
yeah, that sounds good. The question is, will Rogue have cakes when she's laying on the ground there fighting Apocalypse.
Hell yeah.
Because if it doesn't, I'm not watching the show. This show
Hell
is
yeah.
bullshit. Yeah. All right.
You all know what we're talking about. You all
Exactly.
know, you can picture that exact frame from that exact
You know
episode.
that's right. All right. So let's get into the first book tonight. It's Uncanny X-Men number 340, released January of 1997. Our creative team of Scott Lobdell and artist Joey Madger, never could pronounce it. Our inks are on Tim Townsend. Um, our cover
Tracer.
here, yeah, our cover here is Iceman with it looks like Old Man Logan, to be fair, that he's holding here. Yeah, that's our creative team. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the creators of this particular book. Some good, some bad. And we got another question here coming up about that too. So Scott Lobdell, he was the heir apparent to Chris Claremont. Okay, so he's going to be given reign of these books, and he's going to be kind of the creator overlord, really, of a lot of the X-Men universe at this particular time. He's going to be writing both of these books that we're going to review tonight, and he's going to be on both of those books for a very long time. And he essentially just kind of co-opted Claremont's style of telling these long-term stories with 1,000 words in them, and with various artists on these particular books. He takes over at Uncanny 286, off and on time, finishes up at 393. X-Men number 6, the X-Men book at number 6, and finishes at 116. So I mean, doing the math there, I mean, what he's on these books, what, 8 years
200,
ish?
200, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's on
Yeah.
there for a very long time. And he's also, at a point writing X Factor. I mean, he's all over the place on these particular books. So it's like, okay, I mean, do you remember anything about the Lobdell books? Like, am I crazy thinking that he was just, doing a great value Claremont?
I mean, so what drove me off the books was like the Grant Morrison area where the characters started to deviate from the norms that I thought had been established. And so I think, I would struggle to sit here even over with 200 books to consider to say this was a quintessential Scott Lobdell story, but he
Mm,
definitely like kept the ship sailing,
mm,
So I think in that regard, you're absolutely right. It was continuity, and I would also say, yeah, there are no like, because of the just the revolving door of of artists, like there's not like, he doesn't have a definitive partner in the way that Claremont did, right?
right.
So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, no, I think it was just like, yeah, I'm sure there is great stuff in there, but there's nothing that I uniquely associate with him. I think
Yeah.
he wrote a long period of X-Men that was perfectly fine for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah, that's it. You're just, hey, man, come up with something and don't screw it up. And that's what they
Mm.
did. And they allowed him to do it for years. It's like, oh, Lobdell's on this book, Lobdell's on this book, Lobdell's on this book. And, I don't remember. That's such a good point. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, man, that was a Lobdell freaking Joey Mad book that I remember, whatever. No, not really. There's no definitive story that he's in charge of. And again, he gets X-Men 350, that Penta, this huge like thing that was supposed to be built up to Gambit's big reveal, and popcorn fart.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean that's
fair.
basically it. So yeah. All right, so we can't talk about the good of Lobdell without talking about the bad. So once he's off of X-Men, he winds up going over to DC. He's on DC for a long time. He's a huge part of the new 52 relaunch, doing I think the new Teen Titans. Like he's a big part of that. Like, he goes to the exclusive deal at DC, accused multiple times of sexually harassing a young female artist and pressuring them into things. He gets caught for it one time, and he, they kind of brush it under the rug a little bit, and then he gets caught doing it again, and then he's been off the book and pushed off of mainstream comics. He's in his, I think he's 60 if I read correctly. Again, there was a time when we didn't know anything about these types of things. Like, the internet was barely a thing, or, I'm sure there's a bunch of people in the mighty Marvel bullpen that were absolute freaking terrors to the few female and or
Mm.
minority people that worked in those offices. But in a new era here, like he got busted, and he got busted twice. And so did you ever hear anything about this? I remember when it came out because
No,
being on Twitter, I remember when it came out.
I no, I didn't. Not at all surprising. Not not for based anything on him, but just the that industry in general.
Mhm.
Um, no,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a weird industry. It attracts kind of weird dudes, and there's very few females that are in that industry, and there is nothing good can come from that a lot of those times when you have these dudes who are socially awkward in and of themselves, and they get in
yeah,
these situations with a little bit of power, and they use that power to abuse the people that work underneath them.
and
And
this is probably a period where they were starting to get more diversity amongst the creative teams, or
yeah.
just barely beginning to, and then
Mhm.
this is
There it
the
is.
last obstacle. So
Yeah.
that and that was probably opportunity for this sort of thing to begin with. So
Yep. And I do believe I read that he's a comics gator now, so he's joined that Ethan Van Sciver group of freaking, hey, I got Me Too'd or whatever. And, so I'm just going to write like ridiculously white Eurocentric goofy
uh,
ass heroes. And it would make sense. You got popped. So this is the group of people that I'm going to like, throw in with because I can't get a job on a mainstream comic situation. So if that is to be true, fuck Scott Lobdell. Um,
mm.
because those people are the worst. All right. Our artist it's Joey Madge, y'all. I can't say his last name. So that is our guy here. He is going to be the artist on a lot of these books. I forgot he picked up in the Age of Apocalypse on Astonishing X-Men. And
Yeah,
I remember those books. Those books were Age of Apocalypse was great. I'm sorry. I'd
yeah.
probably go back and read it now and I'll be like, damn, this is some bullshit. But I remember those books as being so good at the
Yeah.
time, man. So yeah, he picks up there. He's on 312 of X-Men, with some breaks here and there, which we'll talk about, and then he leaves to go do his creator-owned Battle Chasers. Again, I wish Hutch was here. Do you got any Battle Chasers there, brother Beavis?
I don't. This was as I recall, this was your book. And
Oh no, sir. I don't have any
how many
Battle Chasers.
years after the start how many years after the story that the series started did this number 3 come out is
Yeah,
the
I think there
question.
was an issue between 6 and 7, a 16-month delay. Oh,
Oh, nice.
yeah. Look, we understand working for the man on this podcast. We truly do. And there are issues with working with the man. However, one of the issues of working with the man is that like we need a version of productivity for
Yeah,
you to be able to get things done so we
the
can make
man
some
kind of expects
capitalism.
some books to be drawn
Exactly.
eventually.
Yeah. So if you're like, oh, fuck the man, I'm gonna go make my creator own shit, that's fine. Go ahead. But you do have to put the shit out eventually. And not every 16 months. So yeah, I never read no Battle Chasers. I ain't got no Battle Chasers comic books. Uh I ain't got no Battle Chasers comic books, man.
So,
But
Generation X, right? He wrote that or he drew that?
did he no, that's Bachelor, I believe.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's Bachelor. So
Yeah.
now he gets on this book, and I remember at the time, like, wow, these books are really cool because he was doing a different style that we had, that we
Hmm.
hadn't really seen before,
The
and
and the cool thing, I was just looking at this now, like this, like looks like comic book art.
mhm,
Like there's so like all the modern stuff we picked up. There's definitely instituted like the Mighty Marvel style or whatever, but like this is like just slightly disproportionate and emphasized in different ways. Like this looks like comic book art, and
right.
I'd say that as a compliment.
Yeah, everything is moving but not moving. Like
Hmm.
it feels very actiony, if
Yeah.
that's a word, right? And so, yeah, he gets on the book, and I remember him leaving the book to go do Battle Chasers and being kind of upset by it. Like,
Hmm.
damn, you know what? Who are they
Yeah.
going to replace with him? I remember that part of it, but we're going to have a question here momentarily. I don't know if it's here, but it might come up in a bit. So let's go to the X-Men book. Cedric Nokun is the writer of the book or the artist for the book tonight. he's just doing two filler issues, and after Kubert leaves, and then he's right in between before Carlos Pacheco picks up, R.I.P., who just died this past year. And again, mostly a DC artist. I never heard of him before or after this particular moment. Any Cedric No Cone stories or anything like that?
No,
Yeah, yeah,
no, I
no,
don't
yeah,
have any
Cedric
Cedric
No
McCoon story.
Coons. All right, got you. All right, so let's jump ahead then. All right, so let's get into X-Men, Uncanny X-Men number 340. On the recap here, Graydon Creed is running for president, y'all, on the Trump platform, to be
Pretty
fair.
much. Yep.
Oh, holy shit. This is the Trump platform that he's running on. The X-Men, knowing that he is a danger and knowing that he is the son of Sabretooth and Mystique, they have infiltrated his campaign to try to get information on it before he becomes president. That's Iceman and Cannonball that are on the campaign. Uh, Creed finds out about Bobby being undercover there. He hunts down Bobby's father, has him beat all to be damned, and then he winds up in a hospital, and that's where our book picks up. Do you remember this book from before having to read it now?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Not really. Like it was more honestly, like I know more about like Bobby's relationship with his family from like the movies and stuff. And this was like, again, like when when everyone was like surprised that they started depicting Iceman as gay in the books and like it shouldn't be like the failed relationship and the series of failed relationships and the troubled relationship with his father. I mean,
Yeah.
they were writing this stuff like for the longest time ever.
Right.
So yeah, but no,
Yeah.
this is still Iceman, angsty Iceman.
Yeah, it's just a book. It's just we're telling a story and a larger story about Creed trying to become president. That is a huge story, and it was at the time. And we'll jump over to a different book here as we go through this one. But this book is really just Bobby reacting to this and a story told in a flashback about how
Mm.
Creed, becomes aware of Bobby being in that campaign and then him getting, beaten up or whatever, and then the team's reaction to it. So Storm is the leader that goes and consoles Bobby. She goes with Gambit as well.
Mammies, I believe, was
Yeah,
the
Mammy Storm. Stay tuned, folks. It will come back later. And no, he's just completely distraught about what happened to his dad. The underlying plot of that is that his dad never gave him up in that regard. When they were beating the shit out of him, he never told him that he was a mutant or anything like that. He just they just beat his dad up, and and it's a good story filler in between something story. And again, it's telling the story that's in a larger portion of this about Creed running for president, which is going to, end in a weird way in X Factor 130 here in a bit. But I mean, it's really just kind of a more of a human interest story. So if you're
mm.
looking for like comic book, bing, pow, boom, pash, there's really nothing in here for that. And again, I don't remember off the top of my head if this is like Lobdell's wheelhouse, but I mean, this is a fairly well written story. There's nothing to really bitch about it, is it?
No, and there are any number of Claremont episodes that are like this too. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's just yeah, I didn't think of it in those terms before we started talking about it, but I mean it's very much like like the analogy would be like, when like Ozzy Osbourne guitarist Randy Rhoads dies and just there's a string, Jakey Lee is known because like he didn't, he didn't ruin the band. It's got some
Yeah.
great stuff, so it's like that. It's like, I and like Zach Wilde to say like, I came in, I played the solos like they're supposed to be played, right? So it's
That's
like,
it.
somebody comes in and like, I see what you've made here. I'm going to keep it going.
Yeah.
Occasionally it'll have my stamp on it, but more often than not, it's going to look like what you're used to.
Yeah, I'm not
Because if
gonna
it's
paint out.
not, it's going to be, you're not going to like it.
Yeah, I'm
So,
not gonna paint outside the numbers here. Like
yeah.
this is what y'all like and are used to. That's it. I will use a wrestling reference that I have from my note. This is a rest hold, man. Like everything's going. Like, all right, we need to take a little bit of a
Yeah.
break. We got a big
Yeah.
story coming up here,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna take a rest hold and just kind of slow everything down, and then we'll pick it back up here in a couple of issues. But yeah, this is a complete rest hold issue. Um, yeah. It also Creed has Cannonball working for this campaign as well. Obviously, Cannonball knows full well who his parents are. And their whole little black back plot is, Cannonball knows it, and he's kind of poking the bear a little bit about that as Creed starts to suspect that maybe Sam is a part of, some infiltration as well. So
Maybe.
my question here for you, this is the start of the Cannonball push, right?
Yeah. uh next stick with me for next issue, sir.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Have you looked, you know what's
I
coming?
do believe I
All
know what
right.
is coming
So
next.
yeah,
Yes.
this was Sam Guthrie as Shane Douglas. Yeah,
Yeah.
our next superstar,
Yeah,
whether we want him or not.
he
Yeah,
is going to get the big push here.
yeah.
And please make a note of the bodyguards here. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make note of the bodyguards because this is going to come back here in a second. So, Cannonball as a character, this is really the first time that I ever cared about him, especially after the next issue here, because he was always just a New Mutant dude and an X Force dude. I didn't really read X Force, especially when Cable was around, because I hated the character.
Yeah,
He gets called up to the big time here, up to the uncanny team. But I love his power set, but I just never cared about the character. Like
yeah.
I don't know, like it just never like resonated with me. I'm not really sure why.
Because he's
Kentucky
from
Hill
Kentucky.
boy.
He's a
Yeah.
white dude from Kentucky.
Yeah, come
Come
on.
on.
But I mean, yeah, that's fair. His father was a coal miner and all that. I
Yeah.
get that part. But it just never like, but his power set is great. I love his
Mm,
power set. Like I think it's really cool, but it's also can't it feels like a New Mutant power set too.
yeah.
Like oh yeah, he can never control his power. He's just
Yeah,
gonna like
every
barrel
single
into
one of
people.
them had like either like a DC level weakness
Yeah.
or like they couldn't control it. Like,
Right. And it was kind of messy sometimes with him, but that's fine. That's what he's gonna come back here in a little bit too. All right, so here's our side brother topic. All right, so Wolverine makes an appearance here. Wolverine
I
does make an
just flipped to
appearance.
this and I was like, well,
Yes.
that's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah. Okay. So Wolverine makes an appearance here in this, and just he's kind of the backup there to make sure that nobody gets hurt. That's undercover. This is a post adamantium ripped out
Yeah.
Wolverine from was that X-Men 25,
Yeah.
and he's gone feral over time. That which since the adamantium was out, the story is like, oh well, since it was gone, his body was just starting to go into another level of mutation. And are we sure Joey Mad is a good artist, sir? Are we
Well,
sure?
again, I'll say it looks like comic book art, and
Oh,
yes, this is bestial Wolverine. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a little much.
Are
I like the transition to the panel on the bottom. This is good visual storytelling. Let's say
okay, are we sure? Because if you see,
that.
if we go back here, if you see those bodyguards there, now again, I would never defend Rob Liefeld, never in a
That's
million of
forced
years.
perspective, like in the Hobbit movies.
Uh,
He only looks bigger because he's in the foreground. Because
could you look at
wait,
the
no, it works the
hands?
other way around.
Yeah, look at the hands on these bodyguards. Are we 100% certain that Joey Mad was a good artist? Now, but if you see anything that he's done recently, he doesn't do this. Like his artwork is completely different now. So obviously he was drawing a particular style at this particular point, doing this kind of, faux anime stuff. But like I'm not 100% sure. Like, and maybe at this point he was just because there's a paid panel coming up here. I think it's on there where you could definitely tell we had a stunt artist or somebody had to fill in there again because he couldn't turn a book around in 28 days.
Yeah.
Like after a point, he just couldn't do it. I've heard he loved video games. That has definitely taken away a lot of productive work hours from folks. That and weed. So I'm just saying, like, the
It
retrospective on
it's
this.
stylized. Come
Come
on.
on, man. Are we 100% sure? I'm just.
99.44.
I was
There's
definitely down with dude. I was definitely down with dude at some point in time, but it's going to start. And unfortunately, we're coming up to his ending route, not
yeah.
his beginning route, and so he's going to be forced to draw characters such as Maggot and Marrow, and those are not good times, y'all. Just to let y'all know, those are not great X-Men times. But yeah, so Wolverine takes care of the people that are spying on the campaign. He's feral, blah 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 blah. All right. So this is that stunt cock page, where I'm not 100% sure. And basically, my title is Iceman is out. Not the way you're thinking, though. But yeah, he's just gonna leave the team. He's just like, my father, after this long conversation with Storm on the roof, I my father's love for me, that's why he did it, even though he didn't out you as a mutant to everybody else. And Storm, it's just a parent's love and all of this. And Gambit has a whole conversation with his father in the hospital about, how he didn't give him up as well. It's This is just a personal story to get Iceman off the team. Not in a bad way, and that is not a slam on Iceman or this particular story, but this is basically what issue 340 is. It's just a way to get Iceman off the team
Yeah.
momentarily. What are your thoughts?
No, I think you're right. And I, again, without like looking at what the team was and what the team becomes, it's hard to put that in context. But yeah, that is obviously the biggest outcome of this.
Yeah.
I do want to give. I think we flipped past a couple pages. I just noticed this. There's a sequence where Jean Grey is reading The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, which is a classic fantasy series. They even adapted it to an MTV show, I think, that wasn't that
Oh,
great.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. His Jean Grey is a spectacular drawing, by the way. Just he
Yeah,
has a
but
clear thing
but
for redheads.
you also have to be like, is that Jean or Rachel or
Yeah, it's
any
not.
other? Is
Yeah,
that
not a
Mary
distinction.
Jane? I
Yeah, not a lot of distinction there. That's fair. All right. Yeah, I mean, and then Storm, to be fair, looks a lot like new WWE superstar Jade Cargill. Yeah,
Well, no, well,
or vice versa. Jade
yeah, vice
Cargill looks like,
versa. She's
yeah.
been cosplaying as
Yes,
Storm and
yes,
made a
exactly.
career out of it.
We're
So
not mad at that, by the way. FYI. All right. And so that's how the book ends. Iceman is going to leave the team. And then this is that era where it's like, hey, man, you can't just buy the X-Men
yeah,
book. You got to buy all these damn
but at
X-Men
least they're
books.
in order. Like
Yeah.
at least like it came out that month. It's
Hmm.
not like so you brought up the earlier books earlier. You brought up like modern books earlier. So in the interim, I read a gang of like the latest books.
Hmm.
And if you can figure out like what order to read them in,
Hmm.
they actually make sense and tell a larger story and it's worth reading. But like there should if there was a diploma at the end of that, I would do it. Like if I got some paper after like putting in that work, I would consider it. But God, they do not make it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, this they wanted your extra $3. But
Yeah.
at least it came out that month and then it would pick up in the next month.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
whatever.
hello, fellow kids. Back in this day, if they were telling that story on week 1 of Wednesday, on week
Yeah,
2 of Wednesday, X Factor is going to come out so you could continue that story week to week.
right,
Because then X-Men 60 is going to come out in week 3. So you are following a continuous continuity to be
right.
able to pick up these books. And to their benefit, we were forced to buy all them shits. Not forced, but we were forced to feel like we needed to buy all of them to make sure we completed the story. So, like, damn, I'm not collecting X Factor, but I want to know what's going to happen because it's telling me I got to read X Factor. So I'm
How
gonna
did
have
Graydon
like an
Creed get assassinated?
yeah, I'm gonna have an X Factor 130, but I might not have any other ones until it picks up in some other storyline. So yeah, and again, this is an era when things came out generally on time and it was I mean I can rarely remember a day of going to Tate's Comics shout out that they were like, yeah, no, that didn't come in this week. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was like
yeah.
on a continuous monthly book. Like, no, that didn't come in this week. Like, it was late.
You
Like,
know what
oh
they
damn.
also didn't do? They didn't publish a list of books at the end of the comic
Yeah.
in an order that suggested that it was a story being told, when in fact they were just telling you, here's 8 other random ass books
Yes.
that may or may not be out that you can or can't buy. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a different time, kids. So yeah, before we go to X-Men 60, we stop off in X Factor 130 for
I
Graydon
had to
Creed's
do this as
assassination.
well because you
Yes.
pick up the next one, you're like, oh shit, he dead? Okay,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, exactly. You're like, oh shit, nobody told me. So X Factor's under the leadership of Val Cooper now. This is not the classic X-Men team, obviously. Sabretooth's on the team, Wild Child, Mystique is on the team as
Yeah,
well. I
so I
think they're
do
led by
actually remember
Forge.
this era of that team
Okay.
because they were compelled to take these villains on the team, and they have like essentially some shock collar bomb
Mm-hmm.
nanite
Suicide
nonsense
Squad shit.
embedded in them if they freak
Yeah.
out or whatever.
Yeah. And they're all set out to protect Creed. It gives them some nice scenes between Creed and his son, and all that. And they know, like, oh, Mystique is on her way to try to assassinate him. But I mean, we're really on some who shot JR shit.
Assassin?
Creed gets assassinated, but it's not by Mystique. And he gets like essentially turned into ash. And X Factor's kind of lightweight getting blamed for it because they didn't protect him from it happening. Do you remember who winds up being revealed as the killer of Creed?
I don't, but
Okay.
I think it might be again just because of the crossover that's coming up. Bastion, who was some sort of super
Mm,
sentinel, but I'm not sure.
okay. Yeah. There's that part of it. And two, does he get retconned back? Like I don't remember him coming back alive in any other book or anything.
I
I
don't
think
either. I
yeah.
don't either, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I,
This is where like I was primarily collecting because I had always collected.
mm, yeah,
And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until they started to deviate from what I would like. They broke the mold, and I was like,
I'm
no,
out.
I don't like this anymore.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, I think I'm in the game here still too. I'm probably conservatively 12 books a month, probably I would say. And most of the main X-Men books, probably X Factor as well, my Spider-Man. Like I was probably pretty deep in, and I don't think I bailed out for a bit, because it just became like that was my hobby. Like, what else the
mhm.
hell am I gonna do at this point in time? So I might as well just collect these books and read them when I can. But yeah, that is our other story that we had to stop off on. Beef Gore going to X-Men number 60, where we get a recap. And to be fair, shit is completely unrelated to the book you just read.
Yes.
Like, I mean, these are completely different books. Like, oh, okay, yeah, now we're gonna, now read X-Men number 60 to find out what happens. Huh? Who? What? These books are completely unrelated to one another. Our recap is Storm is just attacked in her room by Cyclops, but it's not really Cyclops. It's what Kandra, the Eternal, and allegedly she's attacking Storm because Storm, as a child, stole something from the heart of what is it, the heart stone, yeah, of Kandra when she was a little like street urchin in Africa, and we get a recap of their feud told in backstories as well. B plot is Cannonball and Jean, discussing the assassination of Creed, and then the Shadow King returns. Air quotations or question mark, kind of, sorta. So let's get into this book. Now, you said before we recorded when we did our wrestling show that Kandra makes an appearance in X Men the animated series, correct?
So like none of this made sense to me, and I was like, who are these people? And Kandra is so they I think after the X-Men cartoon that showed Gambit's backstory with the thieves and the assassins,
Yes.
and the tithe, I think they told some semblance of that story, and the Eternal in that story was Kandra. So I
Mm,
don't know that they ever called the one in the cartoon Kandra, but that's what I came to understand was she is essentially that person, and she made the thieves and the assassins tithe
yes.
to get her powers on.
Yeah, one of the greatest X-Men animated episodes of all time, baby. Remy, it's your brother. All right, that
That's
the
part is when he
accent.
just like takes the box away. You
That's a
teased.
great episode.
You teased,
Uh,
don't check the box. You teased, too
you're too
stupid to
stupid to
tell. We're
check the
not gonna
box.
tell you.
Yeah. Lord. All right. so, so everybody makes it into this story like for this recap except Mijnari, y'all. I mean,
Well,
honestly, like
but
everybody. Come on.
if you would have asked me like who Jamil is, I would have
Yes,
said
that's
he's
Mijnari.
Mishnari. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Like, I mean, all the backstory that you could want about Storm that you've heard of in the past, her claustrophobia,
yeah.
from being in New York to being a street urchin and a thief, like all of that is told in this book. out of nowhere. Like these are two filler issues. 61 is essentially the conclusion of this story that are completely unrelated. Now, there's at some point in time where Uncanny X-Men and X-Men don't do this. Like where there's stories that are like kind of independent. Like if you
Yeah.
read Uncanny one week 2, then in week 3 if X-Men came out, it was a continuation of that story. I just cuz I remember they were trying to keep them separate with Blue and Gold, but at some
Mhm.
point in time, that all gets muddied up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they would might like break up a team, but I mean I think when they're like, well, they all do live in the same house. At a
Yeah,
certain point it became like a little bit difficult to keep them completely unconnected. But
yeah,
even in that first run, like there's a side angle side story in Uncanny, and then episode or like one through three of X-Men is like a story, and then it like crosses over after
mm,
three into the other book, into the gold book or what. So it wasn't like month to month, it was
yeah,
more like kind of block
yeah.
by
Story to
block with
story.
coupled more tightly, and then they go off and do their own thing.
Okay. Yeah, this book is completely just dropped in here for sure. And again, they're about to get not a new creative team, but at least a new artist. So
Mm.
again, Carlos Pacheco's and he's about to have a fairly lengthy run on this X-Men book. He's on this book. He's going to be on the book for a while. So this is just a filler story, and a chance to get, Storm a little bit of a rub here and to reveal a little bit more of her backstory. You know,
There's
because it's
parts of this art that are kind of Rick Leonardi-esque to
well, and
me.
yeah, and it's kind of like 100. Yeah, I mean, they're just copying somebody here. Yeah. So I brought up the part about Kandra and the X-Men, the animated series. Yeah, you know what? Let's go to the next slide because it's gonna answer the question or ask the question or whatever.
She should have been like in this whole sequence, she should have been like, "Oh, Cyclops, you need me to beat that ass again?
Yeah,
Because I got powers
yeah,
now."
we do get the recap for that as well. But like, okay, so Black Panther and Storm. Okay, so were you reading books when they put them together and had the
No,
marriage?
no.
Same, same. My brother was reading at the time, and he said that this was some of the worst shit that he had ever read, putting them together because it made both characters weaker. Like it turned him into like kind of a jealous fuckboy, and it
Yeah.
made her come out to off as being like kind of this, you know, not being the goddess that she is. And so it was kind of weird that they put them together. I never knew before, not necessarily reading this book from by reading stuff later on, that they had already led this stuff that like it I thought this was some sort of retcon back in the day, but they had already laid the foundation that her and had T'Challa had hooked up when they were younger. I mean, did you know that outside of the book?
No.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So
This is expert commentary here. You you
yeah,
you you can't
exactly.
pay for better analysis than
Okay,
this.
I
No.
got some
No, I didn't
analysis
read that
for you.
shit. I don't
I got some analysis for you. Name a billion people in Africa. You trying to
know.
tell me these two they gonna hook up with each other? Come on, son. Really? Come on. On the whole continent, they just happen to
Well,
be
but
they
we've
have super powers.
established that the five black characters who are featured all know each other
Yeah,
and have,
exactly. Yeah, they on a group chat for sure. So
yeah.
so yeah,
They're
I
like, "You
just
did y'all know Count Chocula was anti-vax?"
exactly. Okay, and we're gonna get to this here in a second as well. Shadow King sucks. You tell me a good
Yes.
Shadow King story, and I'll tell you you're a liar. Tell me a good Shadow King story.
Well, Shadow King works better like I
Is
you know
Xavier's
at
foil?
well, I was gonna say as like a nemesis for like the New Mutants,
Mm.
where like him being a controlling adult and them sucking
Yeah.
basically. I mean, so I think there's some more Shadow King in the New Mutant stories. Um, when he takes over Xavier on Muir Island, leading up to the split, is a decent story.
Mm.
Um, that was good
Yeah.
in my opinion, and it was also set up by like there was like some long term stuff that went into that, so that was legitimate.
Mm.
Um, but then I think they've just tried to figure out how to like bring him back, and he's always just this astral plane projection that does or
Right.
doesn't have. Yeah, so when it's when it's I think the thing that sucks about him is when it becomes I possess somebody and you can't fight me without hurting them. That
Yeah,
gets tired real quick, and
yeah,
we see that here, and
right.
we obviously saw that with Mijnari.
Yes. Not Miss
His horrible
Nari.
shit.
Miss Nari.
Mijnari.
Yes.
That was the first episode. Was like, what is happening? Because
Yeah.
like everything else was like basically a version of the book, and that one was like, what's happening right now?
Yeah.
Man,
I thought I put this in here, like, so as they're going through this story and in our flashbacks, and then when they bring it back when they're about to, when they're fighting, and then there's whatever the little dude's name and the little girl is. Storm been a mammy for years.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like this ain't like a new thing about they're making
No,
her as a mammy like character. Like she's
no.
always been taking care of some non-black children her entire career existence here in this comic book. It's just
Well,
like, no,
yeah, she's the mother. She's the goddess, and that
yeah,
means she's everyone's mother.
yeah, Jesus Christ. All right. There's our B plot, y'all. So, uh, Cannonball is upset essentially that Creed was killed. Not that they necessarily killed, but his life was filled with hate. And this is well within the, Xavier's not around, but they are definitely like trying to, follow through on the dream or whatever. And they're all filled with this bullshit, to be fair. About humans being okay people, and we got to, yeah, when they go low, we go high,
Mm.
and it's a bunch of crap. And Gene is kind of in this role as a mentor here for Sam, and Sam's just telling his story, about his old man, about how he always wanted to come to this country, and it's just I hate the fact that Creed died full of hate. Like that just didn't really do much for me, and it leads to a question, two of them actually. One, where was Sam and his daddy on January the 6th? No, but
they were
seriously.
they were gonna fight like hell to restore the republic.
Okay, I'm just saying that there's a strong possibility that Sam Guthrie and his daddy was in the Capitol building on January the 6th.
Well, to be fair, Kentucky was a border state, right?
That's fair. Yes. Yeah.
And they did they did reelect Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they carried for Trump.
Yeah, Creed was going to
Yeah.
Creed Trump was going to restore the coal mining industry,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so we had to support that, so we could
Yeah.
go back to these
Yeah, they were going to fight
terrible.
like hell to restore the republic.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm really thinking that they was there on January 6th for sure.
So, then second question.
Mm.
Was Gene bringing back the high-rise pants before anybody else?
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah, I think yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think Gene was yes, a definite fashion forward fashionista here. Okay, so subplot of that question: when are you gonna die? Like, why is she even alive here? Like, I'm trying to figure out. Wait, when are they going to kill her? Because
So she doesn't die again until after the Grant Morrison, after Magneto is revealed
Zorn.
as Zorn,
Oh.
then there's a sequence where she gets roped into like she starts accumulating power again, and
Mm,
then it's the Phoenix, and then her and Wolverine are blasted into space, and she dies while they're orbiting the sun or some bullshit, and then they
mm,
come back to Earth and she's dead.
yeah, I don't remember that. Yeah, I think I
But it
definitely.
but at this point, this is after. So this X-Men 30, they got married,
Mm,
and they don't break up until the Grant Morrison era. So she's Scott's wife at this point,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm,
Yeah. So
well,
I think she doesn't die for a while.
yeah, and she's the man in the chair at this point in time because Scott's more out in the field and the leader,
Yeah.
but she's more not doing that, kind of assuming the Xavier role.
Yeah.
So the second question on there, besides the Guthrie's in January the 6th, let's play our game, y'all. Maga, not Maga. All right, so we got the main components here of the people that are on there that are running or attempting to run on the Creed Trump platform here. All right, so we got our main characters here. I didn't put Bobby's daddy on here because I'm fairly certain that we know that he was a Trump supporter. So we're
Yeah,
gonna call him MAGA.
yeah,
So let's go from the top here. Storm, MAGA, not MAGA,
not MAGA.
not MAGA. That's fair. I can't. I try to think of a compelling argument as to why she would be, and I can't come up with one.
Well, like, is she Omarosa?
Well, there's a fair, but she did turn
Yeah,
fairly quickly, so I'm gonna say not MAGA. Jean Grey, MAGA, not MAGA.
not MAGA. I mean, she's not the suburb wife to have been turned, you know, for get out of our communities and what have you. She's not MAGA. Okay. All right.
Rebuttal. She's married to Scott, who's probably MAGA. 53% of white women supported Trump.
What state is he from?
What he's what Nebraska? Is that where the
Oh shit.
yeah. Okay, so she's what? She's from like somewhere in the New England
I think
area.
she's from Illinois, or is she from
Is
like
she?
Chicago?
That's Kitty Pryde, ain't it?
Maybe, but I thought
Okay.
she was from that direction as well.
Okay. So that's a fairly blue area. Um, Gene's a tough one because again, 50%.
He's from Alaska.
Okay. Mm, military. He's an orphan. He should be in supportive of supportive programs for people, but it's a little tough, man. That's a little tough. But Gene,
He does blindly support another despot's dream. So
yes, he
but he
definitely
did kill him
he did
eventually.
also kill him eventually as well to break free of that cult.
Boy,
Uh,
that's tough.
yeah, yeah, Scott's a tough
I
one.
hate just because I could stand the thought of him, I'm gonna say not MAGA.
Okay, I'm gonna go with
I hear your
Gene.
argument,
Yeah, I'm
but
gonna
I'm
go
gonna
with
say
Gene,
until
even
proven
though,
otherwise.
yeah, even though 1 out of 2 white women did support Trump, I'm gonna take her on the other 2 of the one, and say Gene's not MAGA. All right, Remy LeBeau, MAGA,
Remy
not
LeBeau
MAGA.
doesn't vote, so
He always lost his rights.
he's not registered, and so he doesn't really vote. Now, as soon as he gets charges, on some sexual assault, he's gonna support Trump.
Yeah, yeah.
But until then, he's not registered to vote. He doesn't really even care.
I got charges. Okay. I think we've established that Sam Guthrie is MAGA. For sure. There,
Well, but he could, like, Sam's dad is, and he has a bad relationship with his dad, so he could just to be counter to his father, he could go the other way.
this is one of those situations where they go to his father's house on Thanksgiving and they don't talk about politics, eat mashed potatoes because that's what white people do on Thanksgiving, and watch Fox News all day.
Yeah.
He's MAGA. There's not a chance the Cannonball's not
Well,
MAGA. He might have
maybe
thought he
maybe
wasn't
he
MAGA.
leaves when somebody drops the first N word.
Yeah, that's fair.
Maybe he's like he goes out of a sense of duty, but once the N words start flowing, then he leaves.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna blast out of here, literally. Okay.
I'm well nigh invulnerable
Yeah,
when to MAGA when I'm blasting.
this is a good one. Bobby Drake,
Bobby
MAGA,
Drake,
not MAGA.
but he's not MAGA. Come
Come
on.
on. Are we 100% certain about this? There is the log cabin Republicans that support gay. There are gays for Trump, which is like roaches for Raid. It, it makes it. He's a white gay as well.
Well,
I
he's
would.
not gay at this point.
That's
Well,
fair.
no, let me rephrase
Well,
that.
yeah, he's
He
not
hasn't
out.
come out as gay. He's not
Yes,
accepted that. So
yes. I would. I don't know. I don't know. I would like everything that you would think with him otherwise that he would be rebelling against his father. He would go like completely the opposite direction because of what his dad did. Like I totally understand that. Trying to be more progressive in an open platform. I cannot support Creed Trump, but I'm gonna say not MAGA, but I'm not. I
well,
don't feel that good about it.
so here's I think the issue. Like I think you could make the argument all these where we're not sure they're on the fence. They might be 2016 MAGA, but not 2024 MAGA.
And yeah, that's fair. Like I didn't know it was gonna be this bad MAGA.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah.
But the funny thing is, like, this is the first time where like when we think we've done the Avengers on this, and it's like they're all MAGA. the X-Men, the X-Men is not as clear.
Yeah, that's fair. And
But
so we'll
they're minorities, so that
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
And we'll play this game as we go through because there are people that are going to start to come up in these books. I'm like,
Bishop
yeah.
MAGA as fuck. That's Herschel Walker in the comics.
I see
He
Bishop at the
sold
mall.
everybody out.
Yeah, I
This
see
in
Bishop
the
at the
Civil
mall with a
War.
Tim Scott on.
He's like, yes, sir.
Yeah,
We gotta
exactly.
get rid of these
Got to get
ne'er
rid of
do
these
wells and tricksters.
uppity. Yeah, yeah. I see Bishop at the mall with a Tim Scott T-shirt. Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. But we will play this as we go through because I think it's, for some of these books, it's a better story than the actual comic book. Because again, we're dropping in. Again, we might have said that we're not excited about this X-Men 97, but I think it's just more like lowering our expectations so we don't get ourselves disappointed. I
Yeah,
think
we're
that's a
fooling
mature,
ourselves.
yeah, it's a mature way to look at it. Because if this was 10 years ago, they're like, oh shit, they're making X-Men 97. Like, I wouldn't be able to be held back. Like, I'd be so excited. I wouldn't be
If
able
it
to hold.
was 20 years ago, we'd have been like, "Oh no,"
Yeah.
because season 5 would have been too fresh.
Yeah, it's too
I
fresh.
haven't even watched all of season 5.
Yeah, I can't. There's an age of not Age of Apocalypse. There's a onslaught story in there, or at least the character makes an appearance of some
Mm.
sort. Onslaught does, at least the visual character of it. I don't know if it's anywhere near to the story. So, all right, I think the last slide is the final reveal, y'all. Shadow King, MAGA as hell. Definitely MAGA. Voted multiple times as well. It's different people.
That's true.
Infiltrated
He just
different
keeps
people.
possessing people and voting.
Yes, and voted MAGA. And so yeah, it is revealed. Maybe if you've read ahead, that's actually not the Shadow King, but it is revealed that one of her little mammies, custodial people, has been infiltrated by the Shadow King, and he is back to possess the heart of the Eternal and get that power for himself. The art on this is an imitation of
Not
somebody that
good.
I can't remember. Yeah, it looks like a fake Will Spatasio, and Will Spatasio was doing a fake
Mm.
Jim Lee, and this is kind of like third cousin removed. That's basically what it
Oh
is.
no, like who's that? We read some after Jim Lee got off the books. After they who drew the books like right after the Image guys dropped off of them after the split, blue
Mm.
and gold split, because there was that one
Yeah, before
Ian
Kubert.
Churchill.
Yeah. Before Kubert took over.
Yeah, this
Uh,
is like that.
Yeah, it's a imitation of somebody else, and like you can definitely tell there. So Cedric No Coon or whatever your name is there, it's a little bit off, but I understand because they probably told him, "Can you draw it just like that so people won't be bitching?" Yes,
Well, probably they found out like 3 days before the book was due, like, oh yeah, they no, the regular artist can't write it. Can you knock
yeah,
this out?
yeah.
So,
So that's fine. Okay, and that's it, y'all. So our first two X-Men 97 books, brother Beavis. What are you thinking?
uh, well, I think that again because this is an imitation of the Claremont era, there is no single book that means anything.
Mm,
So it's a no decision,
yeah,
no contest
yeah. Time limit
till
draw.
we have
Yeah.
figured out what's actually going on in the larger story.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the books are kind of like the backdrop of the whole series here. Like, oh, okay, yeah, we're gonna go through these books, but I think what's kind of going on in the comic book industry around it is probably a little bit more interesting than some of the books, to be fair. And we're gonna kind of dig into that a little bit as we go through. So it'll be 2 issues per as we get through. Again, there'll be some stop offs here in between some other books, but that's kind of where we are. All right. So that'll kind of end us up for tonight. Uh hey, I never changed my background from wrestling. I was just kind of looking at that. Remember, you'll be able to find this podcast on
And
SoundCloud.
here are the action figures that
Oh
haunt my
yes, very
dreams.
nice. Yes.
I'm trying to avoid buying these. So
Yes, stay away as those X-Men 97 figures show up at Walmart, which they will. I, this is my final thought on this. I gotta imagine that Disney is like, we better put some money behind this because we're gonna really try to. Is this future investing for something else. Like, because if we blow this cartoon, it could damage a little bit about the live action part of it. So we
Mm-hmm.
really need to, like, kind of put our best foot forward. We cannot just throw out some bullshit and just expect people to like accept it. Like, I think they really need to really put their best effort here, and
It
it'll be interesting because as the first Disney X-Men project.
and the worst thing is like so much of this would be better as a cartoon.
Yeah,
Like so many of the stories they're telling would be better as a cartoon, and they can do a lot with a cartoon. And if they're going to embrace it and hold it up to the same level as the rest of their product and tell decent stories, there's no reason it can't be, more prominent, more widely regarded than any other, movies they put out. But,
yeah,
it can't just be like we're going to put out this streaming thing for whatever. It's, this is an opportunity, and this can, this could lay the seeds for a movie. And
yeah,
that to me, if they're not looking at it that way, then it's a missed opportunity, because this gives them a way to start to tell stories and raise awareness, so that when they do make a movie, they don't have to make an origin X-Men story. They can
yeah.
actually jump into something.
Give us Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Give us
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
You could do that. There's no reason that you couldn't.
yeah.
You could do that with the X-Men. There's plenty of stories that you could tell. I mean, God, those X-Men or Earth's Mightiest Heroes, they weren't telling Avengers stories because there's a bunch of crappy Avengers stories. There's
They
really nothing
were,
to tell.
though. The
Yeah.
first season was like direct rip of the 1963 issue
Oh,
1
okay.
through
Well, yeah.
12.
Okay. Well, again, remember, I didn't jump on to that till much later. So, but
You didn't
they
you
can
you
do
weren't
something.
those weren't in your box in 63?
No, not the 63 box. Yeah.
Mm, right.
Hello, I would like some Silver Age comics, please. No, that didn't happen. All right. So yeah, so we'll be back relatively quickly here for these. These are easy to turn around because we don't have to, one, go buy the books, and two, we can kind of remember a lot of these from memory from reading them so many years ago. So yeah, you can find the podcast, SoundCloud, iTunes. There's no Stitcher, y'all. It's gone. Good Pods, Google, iHeartRadio. You put in Brothers Comics, this will pop right up. You can say it into your Google or your Amazon device, it'll come up. Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. So I get to bring back the X-Men the animated series exit music if you're listening on the podcast side, not on the YouTube side. And I'm kind of excited to get through this. Some of these books on my early reads or preview reads, I'm like, oof, it's not a great book. But there are plenty of things I can make fun of. So I'm looking forward to that part of it. So that's where we are. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off as a producer. Go ahead and sign off, Brother Beavis.
All right. Cross promotion with since you have the backdrop up anyway.
Mm.
Podcast 1 at 197.
Yeah. And falling, y'all, and falling. And if Conrad Thompson owes you money, or Colin Thompson owes you money, oh my God, what a crazy.
So what I think we're recording, I don't know if it'll be released, but our next endeavor is also Marvel related, correct?
Correct. Yes. We're gonna go into the new Fantastic Four from 1978.
New is a little bit of a misnomer in
Well,
this
but it was
context.
at the time. The new Fantastic Four, the NBC one season, I think 13 episode version of the Johnny Storm Human Torchless Fantastic Four. That'll be the next offering for cartoons and serial. I told Brother Beavis it's not as bad as you remember, but also you might not remember it because preview alert in our area, it got preempted pretty much every week. So we may do the Magneto episode, which is episode 2, which is a little bit cheesy, but the pilot is not that bad. It
I
really is.
also watched the Doctor Doom one, and it's the same plot for what
Yeah.
it's worth.
Shocking.
As the Magneto one, well, not the same plot, but the same resolution.
But is it as cheesy as you thought it was?
We'll save it for the
There you
we
go. Don't give
save it
away
for the
content.
podcast.
There you go. So that's a tease, y'all. So come back for cartoons and serial. That'll be released at some point in time here in the next few days. Check this one out as well. Subscribe on the YouTube page, and we'll see everybody next time. Peace, everybody.
Peace.